Welcome to the first episode of Powerhouse Talk.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having us. We definitely have lots of topics about the don'ts in terms of entrepreneurship.
Yes.
It's the reason why I'm bald. I'm very much looking forward to doing this.
Let's start at very fundamental questions for all entrepreneurs. When we have a big idea, we have a good idea, it always comes to a very critical moment that we think that we have get to the point of finding the product market fit. How do you know, from your experience, Colin, that you're ready for the market? And how do you know that the product market fit is the right moment?
Something that I tell founders all the time, which is contrarian, is that your product is actually not that important. Your go-to market is far more important than your product. Founders don't build amazing products. Founders build an amazing go-to market and then let their customer and partner feedback help them to iterate and create an amazing product. And whenever I speak with founders, particularly early stage, I know that they get obsessed with their idea, but the fact is your idea is only a business when someone actually pays for it. So the reality is, how do you know that you're ready for the market? The day that you start, to be honest. How do you know the market is ready for you? The day that someone actually pays for it. But as you continue through the entrepreneurship journey, you're going to go through various stages. So for example, at the very, very early stage, you just need people to say yes. You don't know what's the right messaging. You don't know who are the right target segment of customers. You don't know what's the right commercial model to be charging them. You don't know what's the right distribution model. So whenever I speak to founders that don't have product market fit, it's you haven't finished testing and iterating the best path of doing it. So take, for example, Slack. Slack was originally, I believe, a gaming company. And completely by accident, what they found is that people weren't buying the gaming solution that they had, but they loved the internal chat solution that they had. So they pivoted and then that turned into a multi-billion-dollar company. So the reality is you're ready the day that you start. The market is ready. The more that you test it, the more that you iterate it, which vertical do we sell to? Which channel partners do we distribute through? What's the right messaging? What's the right commercial model? And you keep on testing that regardless of how you go. But honestly, it's the day that you become an entrepreneur, you're ready.
So the same questions to Lamia.
Yeah.
So how do you build your first prototype and how do you go out and get the real users, just like what Colin said?
I think founders often obsess about finding the perfect product, and then there's always room to improve, but you're never going to get to a perfect product unless you understand what the customer segment wants, right? So we're a solution provider for people who are visually impaired. We've been doing this in Hong Kong for the past 4 years, but apart from deeply understanding our target customers, sometimes they don't even know what they want. So how do you translate their unspoken needs to a product? It's a very difficult question, especially for an entrepreneur with very limited resources. You don't have access to talent pool because you don't have money to pay salaries, so on and so forth. So in the early days, it's so important to build a solid team and to have a very solid goal. And whenever we talk about product market fit, you will only know when you are doing trial and error. You have to go to the market. You have to see what they're paying for. When I started Seeker 4 years ago, it was a crazy thing because I knew my product was not perfect, but it was still selling. And that was an indicator that I am heading to the right direction. And that's what founders need to do. A minimum viable product, put it out in the market, test it out, and see what the response is like.
And honestly, the more negative response you get, the better. That's actually exactly what you want to hear. Something actually that I wanted to mention, and you and I were speaking about before, Lamia, is even it's not just product market fit, it's market product fit. And I actually think back to a company which I invested in, and he sat down with me and he was telling me he was struggling to raise capital as they weren't getting a lot of sales, but he really believed in what he was doing, like every single other entrepreneur out there. And it was a cryptocurrency research SaaS platform, to which what I said to him is stop selling business to consumer, start selling business to consumer. And I learned this from one of my mentors, extremely successful man, built 3 unicorns. He had invested in a health tech app in Latin America, and they were also going business to consumer, sales very, very slow. Change your model to business to consumer, and they partnered them up with Airbnb. Now, most people will ask, what the hell does that have to do with a health tech app? The answer is, in Latin America, it can take you like 3 hours to get to a doctor, 3 hours to see a doctor, 3 hours to get back. So let's say you book an Airbnb and you get sick. The Airbnb host has to refund your money. Airbnb refunds the money, they lose money. Well, what if when you book it, you just tick this button to activate this telehealth app for an extra $10 and you have that certainty? Through that one deal, they acquired 30,000 customers.
These are so impressive entrepreneur, how to pivot and how to uplift their thinking over solving the same equations with a different way. So I have another questions, which I believe every entrepreneur have the same problem, is when they're trying to find investor, and the investor always asks, how are you sure that your product or service is market product fit? How do you prove it? Would you please give me some example, Colin?
I love this question. And I get asked this question very, very, very frequently. So let me break down the context of it. When a founder is pitching to an investor, there's certain things that the founder needs to know ahead of time. Investors, spoiler alert, want to make money. They're not investing in you because they think that you've got an amazing idea. They're investing in you because they expect you to turn that idea into a money-making business. So what they want to understand is, first of all, very, very simply, who do you sell to? What's the problem that you solve? And what proof do you have that these users are actually interested in it? And I see this all the time when founders tell me about your idea. And I remember I met this lady, she's like, we do geographic arbitrage and spatial finance and resilient investing. And I'm just like, excellent. I speak 2 languages, but I have no idea what the hell you just said. Who do you sell to? What do you do? She's like, okay, we sell to insurance companies. I'm like, great. What do you do? We give them risk analysis on buildings against natural disasters. But we also tell them how resilient they are with, let's say, flood barriers or fire sprinklers. I'm like, just say that. And what traction do you have? Well, we've already got pilots and trials with Allianz Insurance and AIA. I'm like, that's it. That's your pitch right there. That's all investors want to hear. It's not, I'm built on the blockchain and I'm using agentic AI. The more complex words that you use, the less likely you actually are to raise. When you're pitching a solution, your deck isn't the presentation, you are the presentation. They're investing in you and the belief that you can actually turn this into a business. We ask them, is this a pain point? How big is this pain point? How much would you pay to have this pain point solved? And a lot of founders are too worried or too scared to just go out there and ask it. If you have competitors, congratulations, because you've just got a product market fit. If somebody else is doing it, you only really need to iterate what they're doing by about 10%, and you've proven that there's people which are prepared to go and spend money on it.
So I think fundraising is a very critical point of a founder's startup journey. But Seeker, in the sense, we've had a very different journey, and I'd like to share more on that. When I went to funders at first, I said, okay, I've got this product, these are the people that are using it, this is how much they're paying for it, and then this is where I want to be in the next 5 years, right? And this is what I'm going to do with your money. The investor asked me one question: you're going to make the money I'm going to give you. Why do you need my money? And then I went back and I thought about it. To be very honest, I can do it without them. Yeah. And that's when I realized that am I just raising money because that's the buzzword going on, that okay, within the first couple of years you got to raise? And I did make the money from my sales. And then I put the investment back into my business. And then now the question was expansion plans. And I then went back to the same investor. I said, you were ready to pay for it last time. Would you do it again? And then she said, well, do you think you can do it without me? And that got me thinking that very often founders give away a majority of their acquisition or their equity just because they think that they need the money. You need to really be clear. What are you going to do with the money? How is it going to help you? Is this the right time to raise? I have walked out on couple of corporates who were trying to also give us funding for Seeker. And at that time I said, oh my God, how can I say no to these corporates? These are huge conglomerates, right? But then again, I knew what the valuation of my company is. I had the faith in my team that we will bring it to the next level. And then we refused. But for an early stage startup founder, it's very difficult to make those decisions. Even now, I will say, Seeker is 4 years in. And now we're raising our first round because now we know exactly what we want to do with that funding. We know why we can't do it without the investor. And we're at a great position where we choose the investor, not the investors choose us. It has to be a mutual connection.
So, Tulamia, I have heard a lot about your journey through different channels. So, any roadblocks during the whole journey?
In terms of roadblocks, I think this is a common thing that any entrepreneur or anybody in life is going to have. But it's very important that you don't shy away from it because every roadblock is either going to be a learning opportunity. So I can give you an example, which is when I started, Seeker during COVID, I was still in law school and I'd already make a product and it wasn't, like I said, the most perfect looking, but I went to the NGOs who I thought were going to be my client and I said, please, what do you think about it? Would you buy it? And they looked at me and they're like, you're in school, so probably a school project and you're going to go away after 1 year. And when I didn't, I actually was very persistent. I was showing up into the organization once every week, trying to talk to their C-level management to see, to show them that I'm committed to solving the issues. And what happened subsequently was it took me a year to close my first deal because I had to work on building credibility. I had to work on building trust and work on my product because I was getting constant feedback from people. So that was my first roadblock.
What I really love about your story is actually, if you haven't heard it, the story of how Honda actually got started, because also a university student had an idea in terms of motorized bicycle, it just kept coming back, no. And then eventually through sheer persistence. So for anyone who's listening as an entrepreneur, Lamia's example is what makes an entrepreneur successful.
So entering a new market, not only that you have to build your team to support a new market, probably you have overseas staff and also encountering overseas culture. So I like to start with Colin this time. So how do you know your company is ready to expand?
When a company is scaling, seed stage is proof of possibility. Series A is proof of repeatability. Series B is proof of scalability. Series C is proof of global scalability. A company hits unicorn status at around Series C, when it becomes a global company. What made companies like Snowflake, Twilio, Datadog, Deal so successful is that they planned on building a global company from day one. Why? Because every single time that you can show as an entrepreneur that you have traction in an overseas market, the valuation of your company goes up. It makes you more valuable to investors because it shows this is a globally scalable company. So if you want to growth hack the growth process, start by building a global company from day one. And it's actually quite simple and easy to do. See, it's not when you go global, that's the challenge, it's how you go global. And people ask me, I'm like, is it too early for me to go global? I'm like, no. But being too early is not a problem. Being too late, that is a problem. The easiest way to be able to go global and prove that you got product market fit overseas, very, very simple. Do I have competitors in another market? And second of all, are there other companies who are selling to the exact same target customer base from a 100% complementary angle? Because if there are, the formula that we learned from working with Deal is find yourself 6 partners in that new market. And you can be technology and alliance partners, other software companies who sell to the same customer base, something complementary. It could be systems integrators, it could be resellers, it could be consultancies. It doesn't matter. But a very simple way to do this, and founders overcomplicate it all the time. If you have competitors, if you can have channel partners, and I strongly recommend get yourself those partners straight away, because the sooner that you do it, the sooner you begin creating new revenue streams.
Yeah, I mean, Colin has a lot of experience in the field, but also, I've been in the field for 4 years now. I've never met an entrepreneur who said they didn't want to go global. And whatever the problem is, whenever you're doing market research, I'm pretty sure you're looking at it from a global angle, like which other countries are having a similar situation, and then you decide what the next scaling plans are going to be. So, yeah, it would be very odd if, people don't think about global from the first get-go. So, again, going back to Colin's point, the difficult question is, how are you going to enter the new market? Or how is it that you're going to do the scaling and everything? So, for us, I'm a very firm believer of believe it when you see it. So that's why incubation platforms like Hong Kong Science Park is so crucial, because whenever I'm thinking about scaling, yes, on paper I'm doing all the market research and everything, but I have to go to the country to understand how the business culture is like, who my partners are going to be, how is it that I'm going to recruit the talents over there, understand the whole ecosystem and what's available to me before making that decision, right? If you want more people, more clients into your business, you have to make it accessible. So now what we're doing with the Hong Kong airport and one of our fantastic partnerships with them is, I tell them that why don't you store a secret device over there? We will help people navigate from the entrance to the gate. You don't need an additional manpower to guide them. They can explore the spaces, they can go to the duty-free shops by themselves, make the purchases, and this is helping you in return. So it's always about pivoting as well.
I get asked about Asia-Pacific market entry quite frequently. And I'm currently based in Singapore, and Singapore positions itself as the hub of Southeast Asia. And I've given my feedback previously to the government of stop. They're like, well, how so? I'm like, stop positioning yourself as a hub of Southeast Asia. Like, how do you mean? I'm like, speak more broadly regionally. They're like, okay, why? Like, because whenever a venture-backed company from US, Europe wants to go into Asia Pacific, they're not interested in Southeast Asia. They're interested in the primary markets of Australia, Singapore, Hong Kong first.
Right.
In no particular order. And then after that, it's going to be Taiwan, South Korea, Japan. Why Hong Kong, Singapore, Australia are the easiest markets to enter and do business in. Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, great markets, longer sales cycles, much bigger deal sizes. Going into markets such as Indonesia, where you need to localize it into a language that no one outside of Indonesia speaks, to do deal sizes that are quite small, whereas in Japan, you have to localize it, but the deal sizes are huge. So if you're going to go into a market which requires heavy localization, you really consider the opportunity cost. I would rather be going into Japan and Korea, where I know that people pay premium for technology, than let's say going into something like going into an Indonesia. Unless it's a technology which is really, really geared for, like, let's say the Indonesian market. And by the way, as I did a long presentation with Science Park, and I was actually saying to Science Park that Hong Kong, position yourself as the hub of North Asia and as gateway for the rest of the world. Why? Because North Asia is the wealthiest part of Asia. You've got the biggest economies that are here. It's not just Hong Kong, it's Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, and yes, of course, mainland China. But you've got 5 of the top 20 largest economies in the world. There is a phenomenal amount of business out there, and everything comes and runs through Hong Kong. That's what makes it so valuable strategically. It's go where you can make sales the easiest, and if you do go into a place with requiring localization, consider the other markets that require localization and where the opportunity cost lies. That's what I would say to founders. The other thing that I would say is just knowing and understanding how people buy in Asia, because that is different. People do buy on trusted relationships, and I find that using a partner-led go-to-market is the best way of being able to penetrate Asia. It's very effective, whereas in the US, you absolutely can go and sell direct. So it's just being aware of that. US, I do find Europe, there's also quite a few similarities there. Middle East is kind of a mix of the two. It is very, very relationship driven, which is why you want to have a strong local partner. But when they decide to buy, the deal sizes are phenomenal. All markets in the world are different. Honestly, for me, it's just wherever you can get traction the fastest and be able to grow that and scale that the fastest, follow the indicators, which is why when I talk about global expansion, do you have 6 channel partners in this market? No, you're not going in there. Until you meet that rule, do you have 6 partners? Don't go into the market. We're now on 8 in Hong Kong, including Science Park, which means that we're practically by our own advice, we're going to be here. But I've never seen it fail.
So thank you again for watching, and hopefully that we can see very soon to our next series.